Hello everyone and welcome to Hill Street. Today's story is My Last Fishing Trip by Vesley. If you end up enjoying this story, please leave a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, let's get to this nightmare. This might be the first and last story that I'll be able to share with all of you. I've been hooked on fishing ever since I was a little boy. There was a river a couple kilometers away from the place we lived, to which we would always go at least once or twice a week with my dad. Each week it was the same thing. My dad would come home from work and ask me, "Waylon, did you finish your homework?" And I would always cut him off right before he could even finish saying what he was about to say. "Yes, Dad, now please, let's go to the river," I would then say to him in an excited manner. He would then give me a faint smile, knowing that I probably haven't even looked at my homework. And right as he was. At first, we had a rule that I would have to finish my homework first, and then we would go to the river. But after a couple of attempts and a couple of missed fishing trips, that rule was quickly dismissed. That might have not been the best decision, but we couldn't help it since we both loved fishing so much. We would then go late in the afternoon, camp at the river the whole night, and come back home somewhere around lunchtime. Those were the days, I'm telling you. Anyways, that was a long time ago. Ever since he passed away, things just haven't been the same. I've tried going fishing a couple of times, but I just couldn't enjoy the fishing experience by itself. But rather I would reminisce about old times and how good things were. I used to work as a delivery man, and most of the time I worked alone. I started enjoying the time alone, being able to listen to whatever music you want, and not having someone on your head the entire day. A couple months passed, and my boss decided to upgrade my truck to a bigger one. The problem was I would have to deliver much heavier stuff, and it would be pretty hard to do that by myself. Problem solved. I had a new colleague accompanying me then. His name was Dave. He had been working for the company for a long time, but we never spoke to each other. At first I thought, here goes my peace and quiet that I love so much. But after we got to know each other, I found out that Dave was not a bad guy at all. People might have thought bad of him because of his appearance, but he had a kind heart. One day we were going back and forth in our conversation. "So, what were you up to this weekend?" I asked him. "Oh, not much. Just went on a little fishing trip. There's a lake nearby, and it's full of fish, I'm telling ya." My eyes widened up a bit. Dave did not strike me as a guy who liked to go fishing. "No way!" I snapped back at him. "What?" he asked me. We talked a bit, and he got really excited when he learned that I love fishing as well. That's the story of how we became fishing buddies. Fast forward a bit. It was Friday, somewhere around lunchtime, and we had to deliver a package to a rural village right next to our town. On the way there, we saw a lake a couple of kilometers before the village. We never knew about this lake, and it piqued our interest. We always carried our fishing gear in the truck, so there was no way we wouldn't visit this new spot we just learned about. Package delivered. We went around the village searching for a fishing store because we had to buy some supplies first, and surprisingly we found one. "Hey there, boss," I said to the cashier as soon as I entered the store. "Hello, mate, what can I get for ya?" he replied. Just a bunch of worms and a can of corn," I said. "Anything else I can get for you, mate?" he asked as he was typing on the cash register. "Nah, that's all, thank you. Oh, and by the way, do you know anything about this lake that's a couple of kilometers before the village?" I went back to ask him. His face dropped. This surprised me a bit because he had such a big smile on his face the whole time. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything about it," he replied coldly. I just assumed he didn't know anything about this lake, so I just grabbed the bag with the supplies, gave him the money, and headed towards the exit door. "Have a nice day, sir," I said to him as I exited the store. "Good luck." That was the last thing I heard as I was leaving the premises. We were really excited about going to this lake, despite not knowing anything about it, so we entered the car and took off. The way he said, "Good luck," I didn't quite like it. Dave said to me, "Why?" He probably meant good luck with fishing or something. I replied, "Yeah, probably." Dave muttered. It was getting kind of late. The road that led to the lake was really bad, but that didn't stop us, and we finally reached the lake. This place was beautiful. Not a single ripple on the water, surrounded by thick shrubbery and tall pine trees. I was surprised how there was no one else besides us here. As we were getting our fishing gear out, a tall bearded man approached us. "Hello there," I said to him as he was coming towards us. "Nothing." "Are you the owner of this lake?" I asked him. Nothing again. He then reached his hand into his bag that he was carrying with him. I got scared for a second, but then he pulled out a notebook and started writing something down in it. A couple of minutes passed and he was finally done. He left the notebook on the ground and he started walking back towards the forest. All of this really weirded me out. "Hey, what's up?" Dave asked me. During this strange encounter, Dave was in the truck, so he had no idea what had happened. And so, I thoroughly explained. For some reason, Dave found this to be really funny. "Don't think much of it, Waylon," he told me while giggling. Dave started setting up the tent as I was getting the fishing rods ready. Maybe because the shock from all of this, I completely forgot about the notebook. An hour or two later, I had to take a piss, so I headed towards the woods. On my way there, I caught a glimpse of the notebook, but it wasn't on the ground where the mysterious man had left it. It was pinched underneath the wipers of the truck. I thought to myself, this is really weird. There was no way for the notebook to get over there by itself, and we haven't seen a single person go by. I forgot entirely about taking a piss, and I headed for the notebook. I opened the notebook, and the following was written down on the first page. It requires you to abide to the following rules as soon as you read them. 1. Don't have more than 5 fishing rods out at once. 2. Do not litter. 3. Release all fish that weigh under 2.66 kilograms. The first set of rules seemed normal, setting aside rule number 3, which was oddly specific. But then, the rules started getting weirder. 4. You can light a fire twice, and each fire must contain no more than 6 logs. Only after the first fire has gone out can you light the second one. 5. You must write down in this notebook everything important that has happened in the last hour. After you do that, you must tear off and burn the page with the things you have written down on it within 6 minutes of writing it. 6. You cannot talk to each other about anything regarding your experience throughout the night, but you can read it from the notebook before burning the page. 7. If you break any 2 of those rules, you will be unable to leave the lake for the next 6 hours, starting the moment you have broken the given rules. If this happens, you must pay close attention to the notebook. 8. If you make it through the 6 hours, you will be able to leave, but you must never speak to anyone about anything regarding this lake. You have been warned. At first, I was unsure if I read the rules correctly. Is this some kind of joke? I ran to Dave with the notebook and gave it to him. He read through the rules and started laughing. "There's no way you believe any of this, right?" he asked me while laughing. "Yeah, right," I replied, letting out a nervous giggle. "Come on, this guy is probably just trying to scare us so that we don't do anything stupid and ruin this beautiful lake. And by the looks of it, he succeeded in scaring you," Dave said. "Nah, you're imagining things," I replied, trying to not look scared at all. Anyway, let's get back to fishing, Dave said. As we only had 4 rods in total, we were respectful enough towards nature to not litter, and we didn't catch a single fish for the first couple of hours. So we complied with the first 3 rules without even thinking about them. I got cold really fast, and Dave said that it was time to light a fire. While he was chopping wood for the fire, I decided to play along with rule number 5. And so as soon as the next hour came, I started writing down what had happened. I wrote down that nothing out of the ordinary had occurred during this last hour. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that the tip of my rod started to bend a little. I immediately jumped out of my chair and set the hook, and there it was, the first fish caught for the day. It was a catfish which weighed around 2 kilos. Dave said it would be perfect to grill. I teased him and said, "Aren't we going to keep to the rules?" He just looked at me and laughed. Dave put his knife through the fish's head and started filleting it. I then used the page that I had just written down on as fuel for the fire. The fire had 7 logs in it, so while Dave wasn't looking, I removed one of the logs. The other thing that was bugging me was the time. 6 minutes hadn't passed, so rule number 4 and 5 were complied with. We ate, and we got back to fishing. The next hour came. I opened the notebook to start writing down what had happened, but then I saw that rule number 3 had been erased from the first page. I mentioned it to Dave, but he didn't believe me, and he thought I was trying to scare him. I brushed it off as a coincidence. Man, how naive could I be? I wrote down what had happened during the last hour, and I poured myself a drink. As we were talking to each other, Dave suddenly stopped talking. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer. I thought that he was mad at me for some reason, so I decided not to bug him for the time being. Here comes the next hour. I reached for the notebook, but Dave got it before me. When I took a closer look, I realized that he was shaking a little. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer. I've never seen him look scared ever. This was the first for me. After he finished writing in the notebook, he handed it to me. It read the following: "I know you might not believe me and think that I'm trying to scare you, but I shit you not. I saw something on the other side of the lake. It resembled a deer in a way. Or, only it did at first. I think it realized that I was looking at it, and when it did, it stood up on its back 2 legs, and it started staring at me. I know my eyes might be playing tricks on me, but it looked like its flesh was rotting, and it was hanging down from parts of its body. I just couldn't take my eyes off it. Please tell me I'm not going crazy." As I was reading this, I took a glance at Dave. I could see the terror in his eyes. I was scared to look at the place he mentioned this creature was, but I did. There was nothing there. Dave looked as well. Confusion was written all over his face. I ripped the page out of the notebook, and I threw it in the fire. "Maybe we should slow down on drinking, Dave," I said to him. "I'm perfectly sober, Waylon. I don't think alcohol has anything to do with this." He replied. His voice was trembling. It was midnight now. We both took turns writing down what we thought about this strange occurrence. As I was writing in the notebook, we both heard some branch break in the distance. We both looked in the direction of where the noise came from. To our relief, it was actually a deer. A normal-looking deer passing by. I started laughing. On the other hand, Dave got mad that he had been scared for nothing. He took an empty bottle and threw it at the deer as it was running away. "Hey, you should pick that up," I told Dave. Yeah, my bad. I just got really mad for a second there," he replied, and we both started laughing. Dave went off to look for the bottle that he threw at the deer. I decided to write down for the last time what had happened in the notebook. I thought to myself, maybe the person that handed me the notebook is the owner of this lake. and he likes reading about the experiences of people that visit the lake. I took my pen and opened the notebook, only to see that all of the rules from the first page have disappeared. I started getting scared again. What's going on? I asked myself. Then I realized that Dave just broke another rule: no littering. As I was starting to panic, I saw a new rule appear right before my eyes on the first page of the notebook. Do not move. What? I muttered. As soon as I read the new rule, I felt a presence standing behind me. Chills went down my spine. Dave? I whispered. There was nothing. I could feel and hear something breathing right next to my ear. Chills went down my spine once again. It smelled like something had died and had been rotting there for weeks. I wanted to scream, but I was horrified of what might happen if I do. So I just stood there, staring straight ahead, not moving a muscle. A couple of minutes passed, and that thing finally started going back into the woods. It had only been a couple of minutes, but for me it felt like hours had gone by. I started running towards the truck. I got in, but when I tried to start the truck, nothing happened. I whipped out the notebook to see if a new rule had appeared, but it hadn't. The only new thing on the page was the following sentence: I warned you. I once again felt like something was watching me, and unfortunately, I was right. When I looked in the side mirror of the truck, I could see it. It looked exactly how Dave described it. It was standing behind a tree, peeking at the truck, taking a closer look. It had arms and legs like a human would, but the torso and the head of a deer. It was holding something in its left hand. When I realized what or who it was, I wanted to throw up. It was Dave. I guess all of this was too much for me, and I passed out. I woke up in the morning with tears flowing down my face. The notebook was gone, and so was Dave. Everything was right where it was the night before. The tent, the fishing rods, the stools, everything. I started looking for Dave. I was way too scared to scream his name because I thought that thing might still be out here. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed me. I went back in the truck, and this time I managed to start it. Without a second thought, I floored it, leaving all the stuff that we brought here behind. As I was driving on the bumpy road, I saw that tall bearded man was staring at me from the edge of the forest. I never looked back again, and I drove straight home. People have asked me what happened to Dave. I was never able to tell them the real story because I was too scared of what would happen to me. Well, no more. This burden is way too much to carry, and that's why I'm sharing this story with all of you. I do not know what might happen to me, but I can't blame anyone for it. We had been warned.